and welcome to this episode. I'm really excited to have here our very special guest, Guy Donahi. He's teaching yoga for 30 years, and for me, is the best teacher for yoga philosophy and adjustment. And before we start with some questions, you want to tell about yourself a little bit?
What would you like to know? Let me ask the question.
I will start with it. What was your first experience with yoga?
Well, my first exposure to yoga was when I was around 10 years old. While we were studying in school, we were hearing some stories from the Mahabharata. We were studying ancient India, and there's a story about Arjuna, who is one of 5 princes, and he's receiving a lesson in archery from his archery teacher Dronacharya, and the teacher sets up a target in the tree, which is a painted peacock. The peacock's eye is the bullseye. It's supposed to aim at this bullseye, the target in the tree. And he calls the brothers one by one, 5 brothers. He calls the brothers one by one to come and take aim at the target and shoot. So the first brother comes up and he asks the brother, "So what do you see?" And he says, "Oh, I see a field, a tree, and branches on the tree, and the clouds in the sky. It's a beautiful day, and there's a peacock in the tree, a wooden peacock in the tree, and this is the target." And the teacher Dronacharya says, "Step aside, let the next brother come." So the next brother comes along. He's a little bit more focused on the target. "I see just the tree and the branches and the target and the bird and so on." The teacher says, "Okay, not you." Finally comes to Arjuna. He says to Arjuna, "What do you see?" And Arjuna says, "I see only the eye of the bird." The teacher says, "Shoot."
Oh.
Your intention will reach the target because of your concentration, your one-pointed state of mind. Now, I didn't really understand that exactly as a 10-year-old.
Wow.
But the story really kind of stayed with me for a long time, until today, actually, as a description of yoga, one-pointedness, meditation, and so on. But I guess you're really asking about hatha yoga, asana practice. How did I come to asana practice?
No, I think this is the yoga.
Well, it is.
It is the yoga.
For sure.
I think that in the Western, we think that yoga is asana, but it's just a little part from yoga.
Yeah.
So how it's influenced your life, like from this moment and forward?
Well, it was a time when I became interested in philosophy, and it's a time of change, from being a child to being kind of an adult. From 10 to 11, your intellect starts to transform. You start to become more aware of what's going on around you. In concrete terms, school, exams, education, and then you can start to read the newspapers, politics, all those things. So it's a time when your mind transitions from a kind of childlike state of innocence to maturity. And prior to that time, I felt very kind of harmonious and very much connected with nature, and I was very physical, did a lot of sport, climbing trees, fishing, swimming, all these things. And then as I turned around 11, 12, you become, start entering puberty, and you start to, your mind really starts to change. And at that time, I felt like I was losing something. I was losing something that I had experienced in childhood, which was very precious, a real natural joy, a natural experience of being my body, and being in harmony with my environment, and not worrying about things. And then, of course, as you become a teenager, you start to worry about a lot of stuff. And you think about, you have to work, you have to do all these things, these obligations start to hit you. So in a way, I started becoming interested in philosophy because I started to kind of really question everything around me, because suddenly my perception of reality was changing. But I also felt that what I'd experienced previously was much more real, so much more vital. Like there was a real like vibration in that experience of being a kid, you know, which is so complete. And then as you become smarter, more intellectual, more rational, you start to shut down certain aspects of your personality and certain things which are not acceptable or whatever. You know? You start to rationalize things, you start to control your behavior, you start to change your behavior according to what was expected of you externally. So all these things. So it got me interested in philosophy and spiritual philosophy eventually. First of all, existentialism and that kind of thing. And then my grandma actually, when I was about 12 or 13, gave me a book by Paul Brunton called A Search in Secret India. Paul Brunton was one of the earliest, not earliest, but the early Westerner in the end of the 19th century, I believe, maybe beginning 20th century actually, who went to India and studied with Ramana Maharshi and wrote about it, all these things. So she gave me a book that got me interested in Indian philosophy. But it took me it took me about 18 years before I came to actually practice asanas and, you know, do real yoga training, go to India and so on.
Wow.
So it was quite a long time from then.
From
My first exposure to actually starting to practice. In between, I got really interested in meditation and various things, psychology, Buddhism. But I found I couldn't really meditate because I was also doing a lot of like drugs, alcohol, eating meat, excessive lifestyle. And I was also trying to meditate, and two just really didn't go together. And then eventually I had a health crisis and a kind of psychological crisis, you could say as well, in my late 20s. And I needed to find something to kind of save me. So kind of yoga kind of saved me from a very dark moment also in my life. But it sort of combines for me the philosophical as well as the therapeutic, the health-giving benefits of yoga are amazing. It's also geared towards meditation. And I'd always been very athletic, so it also was very good for me to have something to kind of, some exercise, physical exercise. So I became interested in Hatha yoga.
Wow.
Because of that, and all of those things.
And how yoga helped you with this challenge, you know, because there are many people that are not really familiar with the benefits of yoga, and because I think that in challenges is the most meaningful time for practice yoga, so I want to hear more about this.
Well, it was a time which was extremely challenging for me because I had really bad health condition. I had a lot of pain in my body. I was in a crisis in my life where I had a young child, just got divorced. A lot of things were, you know, very difficult for me. It's hard to say in a way, like, how did yoga help me? Yoga became a totally integrated part of my life. It became so much part of my life that it became my profession, you could say, call it profession, my practice, my teaching, and my interest in terms of reading and study, which could really expand in such a big way through yoga. And you know, obviously practicing yoga took me to India many times, And I was exposed to many different aspects of, yoga is really it's not really a philosophy, the word yoga means samadhi. The word yoga means total absorption, concentration, and there are many different forms of concentration, samadhi, that can be experienced through different types of arts, sciences. And Hatha yoga is just one of many different types of ways in which you can evolve to move towards deep experience of yoga. You can move through music, through vocal, through cooking. There's many different ways, through food, nutrition. These are all ways in which you can explore yoga and experience yoga, and expands and deepens your experience. So yoga became really completely part of my life. It totally changed my life. And when I'm speaking about yoga, we're talking about what's called yoga sadhana. So sadhana means when you do something repeatedly, ideally the same thing every day. So it's not going to a yoga class from time to time, doing this style of yoga, then that style of yoga, although you can potentially create some kind of a sadhana for yourself in that way. But sadhana really means mainly self-practice, and the same practice which expands beyond it being just a physical stretching, breathing, into the way you eat, into the way you sleep, into the moral, ethical values that you have. The quality of your yoga practice expands to throughout your whole life, where you parent, where you're with your children, where you're with your partner. All these things become part of yoga. So it's very hard for me to say, yoga did this, 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 and this. It made me stronger, it made me healthier, and it became totally integral for me. It took me to India so many times. Spent many, many years actually. Like, over the last 30 years, I've probably spent 5 or more years in India.
Wow.
And for me, experiencing yoga is much more than going to a yoga shala. It's being amongst also Indian people, because, as I said, this idea of yoga is it's so foundational to Indian culture. Everything is created through yoga, in the sense of all the great epics, all the scientific discoveries. Everything comes from this deep absorption of your mind on a particular subject, which brings perfect knowledge about it. That is the meaning of Samprajñāta Samadhi. So all these creations of India, the dance, the music, the great epics, they all came from Samadhi. They all came from yoga. So this is what, for me, was a great opportunity to go to India and to feel that my experience of yoga could expand in this way, which we don't really see in the West. And you can go to yoga class, but you do get some chanting, a bit of philosophy or something, but it's not really so integrated. You don't see it as a living, breathing kind of practice and experience.
And if someone is listening to us and wants to integrate more yoga to his life, like, what would you say to him? What's the best way to?
I think many people are afraid, and for different reasons. Some people are afraid to start something and that they don't have the discipline to continue. Some people may be afraid that they're not going in the right direction, that they have to always change from this to that. Of course, in the beginning, when you start to explore what is yoga, you will want to look at different ways people are teaching and see what suits you, because there are different styles and different approaches. The traditional way of practicing yoga is having a personal relationship with a teacher and having a kind of a private communication that allows you to develop your own practice. That is really that's the traditional way. the yoga class where everybody's practicing together, comes from the mass market, the fitness boom in the West. So it's very hard for beginning students to, you can get a taste of some yoga, but it's hard to find what is really appropriate. So the best thing is to find a teacher who has some knowledge. And the other thing I'd say is, as I was mentioning, people are afraid to kind of commit, because very often you're expected to exercise for 90 minutes or something like that. Practice means every day. So doing a 90-minute practice from day one is impossible for most people, unless you already have a very strong discipline, sport, or whatever. So it has to be built up gradually. Everything in yoga should happen slowly. And the ideal way is just to start with just doing a few gentle stretches and learn how to breathe, and then gradually build up a practice. This is the traditional approach. This is the Mysore style approach to yoga. You first start by doing something simple, some sun salutations with repetition, without the pressure to do 90 minutes, but only 10 minutes of practice, 15 minutes of practice, and relax, and then do it again the next day. Some gentle stretching. So every day you just do a little bit. Gradually you increase it until you start with 15 minutes practice, and then it becomes 20 minutes, and then 30 minutes. Eventually, you have a fully integrated practice, whatever suits you. Maybe half an hour is enough. Maybe 90 minutes is what you want. Maybe you want to integrate breathing exercises and meditation, or maybe you're looking just to develop some strength or fitness or for health. There's so many different reasons you can want to start practicing yoga. So for each person, it's going to be a little bit different.
Wow.
Yeah.
You have some breakthrough in your life that happens through kind of samadhi, like
I think a lot, actually, and I think everybody does. Been spending a lot of time in meditation in the last few years, and one of the things that I find, which is normal, natural for anybody, I think, who sits down to meditate, is the first thing that you're gonna confront, see in your mind, are the problems you're currently dealing with, whatever has been going on. So if last night you had some kind of problem you were dealing with, maybe you had a fight with somebody, whatever, you slept with it, you wake up the next morning, it's in your body, it's in your mind, it's present, right? So I think it's totally natural when you go into meditation to kind of resolve some of your issues, things that you're thinking about dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So these are not necessarily huge breakthroughs. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Like some kind of mind-blowing change. Personally, honestly, I think the kind of change that happens through yoga is gradual. It's not gonna blow your mind. It's not gonna be like doing acid or something. It's gradual, progressive change. You're not going to get these big, huge moments. I don't think. Maybe some people do. But from what I've seen, it's much more a gradual process. I think this is actually the meaning, as I mentioned before. People don't like to talk about samadhi for various reasons, but I think we absolutely do have to talk about it, because the very definition of yoga is samadhi. Certainly within the classical yoga tradition, Patanjali yoga tradition, it's absolutely the target of Hatha yoga as well. So the target of yoga is samadhi. So why people don't want to talk about it, I think it's so remote. But the fact is, I think samadhi is a very common experience to everybody, even though it's in moments and hidden for most people. And for other people, they have quite deep experiences at certain times and have memories of experiences from the past, certain times of ecstatic or ecstatic experience. So I think samadhi is something we should absolutely talk about, and it's absolutely something that people do experience. And the meaning, there are two levels of samadhi. The first one is called samprajñata, which means cognitive samadhi, when you meditate on something. And the implication of samprajñata is that you get perfect knowledge about that thing that you're meditating on. So whatever it is you're meditating on, if you can go into samadhi, that means total one-pointedness of your mind, concentration, absorption on this problem or thing or whatever it is, you get perfect knowledge. You get the complete knowledge about what that is, whether it's a problem in your life, an understanding about what caused that, some intuition about some strange experience you had or feeling in your body or memory or whatever it is, or some experience, some encounter with somebody else, some conflict situation, whatever it is, absorb your mind totally in that. You get even if you don't get the perfect knowledge, you're going to get the best possible result because you're not thinking about anything else in that moment. In this moment, your whole mind is focused on this one thing. So it's your best chance of getting the best solution. Now, if you can go into samadhi, you get the perfect solution. You should get the perfect knowledge about whatever it is you're thinking about. That is the definition of samadhi, samprajñata samadhi, with knowledge. It's a cognitive process. You totally get absorbed in it. There's another type of samadhi as well, which is beyond, it's non-cognitive, post-cognitive, you could say. So I think we do get a lot of little breakthroughs, little insights, and things we don't necessarily recognize as being yoga because we're not in the yoga class, we're not actually sitting in meditation, not intentionally meditating, but we are getting deeply absorbed on a subject. You may be driving your car or whatever it is, listening to music, you're thinking about something, your whole mind is just focused on this one thing. This is potentially moving your mind into a deep state of meditation and samadhi, which is dangerous if you're driving.
Wow. No, it's amazing, and it's just kind of the opposite from our daily life, with social media and all the temptation and just to be concentrated one thing at a time.
It totally scatters your mind. That's the opposite of yoga. Scattered mind.
Wow.
The scattered mind is exactly what we have to draw back, bring back, absorb, and this is the process of pratyahara, which happens through pranayama, especially, not so much the asana. So asana is good for your health, mainly. Good for your physical body. It makes you stronger, makes you more flexible. It helps your mind to some extent. And I think the greatest help to your mind through asana practices that it makes you change the way you eat, your diet, and the way you sleep, and the way you treat your body. So it transforms the way you deal with your body. Again, I'm talking about sadhana, doing the same thing every day with a kind of devotion.
Yes.
You recognize you have to change the way you eat. So, for instance, yoga changed the way I ate from being a meat eater 3 times a day, or not really caring too much, a bottle of wine or a bottle of whiskey or whatever, to 2 meals a day, one in the late morning and one in the early evening, with a deep kind of investment in all the ingredients and the cooking and the preparation and the consumption of the food, because your body is just the food that you eat, So eating and food is absolutely central to yoga. So they say these 3 things: right exercise, right food, and right sleep are the 3 things which will take away 90% of your troubles. Right exercise means right yoga.
Yes.
Right food. Food that really supports your constitution and your yoga practice. And the right sleep. Go to sleep at the right time.
Wow. what is the right time according to yoga? There is like,
Yeah, well, for serious yoga practitioners, the right time for waking up is around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning.
wow.
This is what's called the pranayama, the time which is ideal for spiritual practice and meditation. So from around 4 a.m. to sunrise, 6:30, depends on the time of year. That's the ideal time for practice. So if you want to get, I don't know how many hours of sleep you might need, but typically 6.5 to 7.5 hours of sleep is what most adults need. Then you'd go to bed at like 9 p.m, 8:39,
Wow.
something like that.
Wow, it's so different than the way we live. Okay.
Yeah, because before I started practicing yoga, I'd be, writing and studying and being creative at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning at the end of the day.
Yes.
And then when I started practicing yoga, that totally shifted.
Wow.
So I'm still up at 4 a.m, but now I'm waking up at 4 a.m.
Wow.
and enjoying from 4 till 6, whereas before I was enjoying from 1 till 4. Now I'm enjoying from 4 to 6. And actually, it's a much better time because you're fresh. Nobody else is awake. It's really quiet. It's really peaceful. So it's really an ideal time. It's kind of the same in a way, but you're fresh.
Yes.
Right.
Wow.
And it's
Different energy.
totally different.
Yes.
So that my life completely changed 33 years ago. Yeah, that's more than half a lifetime now.
Before we finish, you have some sutras that you like, your favorite, you want to share with us, or some ideas that you think are.
Well, I do have a favorite sutra. I'm not sure if it's useful for everybody because it says something about my personality a little bit. I love there's one sutra about Santosha in the second chapter. Patanjali speaks about Santosha, which is one of the niyamas. It says, the practice of Santosha brings you the highest happiness.
Wow.
Sukha labha. So just by being content, Santosha means contentment. Just by being content, you can get everything. And if you think about it, it's logical because if you don't desire anything, if you don't stress about anything, if you're just totally okay, then you're okay. What more is there? So simple. It's so simple, obviously. Not in practice necessarily, but anyway, just being, it's kind of, shouldn't require a lot of work.
I think it's a really good message that like yoga, it seems maybe complicated, but it's really simple also, like the contentment.
No, I think yoga is very simple. It only seems complicated because the texts are giving so many different techniques, and it's for all different types of people. So you can't consume all the techniques. You can't do all the techniques. It doesn't make sense to you for you. So you have to, obviously, as if you're interested, you learn about all those things, but then you have to choose, or your teacher helps you to choose what is really going to work for you. You don't need to do all those practices, all those asanas, all those pranayamas, study all those books. Actually, it's better to limit. And if you're smart and if you understand where to focus your attention, then you'll go much deeper. If you spread everywhere, again, it's the scattered mind, which is the way we typically operate today. The prana and the mind is scattered because of all this, short attention span and swiping and whatever you do on the phone.
Oh, yes.
Texting, messages, emojis, all that stuff. The mind is just constantly busy.
Yes.
It's the opposite of your totally scattered mind.
Wow. Thank you very much, Guy, on your
Sure.
time. And in the comments below, I'm putting link to your website.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Guy is sitting here in Pardes Chana, Khartoum, and he really recommended. I will be there. Thank you so much. Thank you, Guy.